Thumper. The first thing you hear is the jaw, a hollow drumbeat that gets closer even when the hallway says it cannot. In Lethal Company, Thumper's lock to vibration and menace, not sight, which is why they pin you in straight corridors and overshoot corners where your noise cuts off. The rule is counterintuitive. Do not race the beat in a line. The break line of sound and the rhythm loses you. Thumper. You survive by shaping the space. Duck through doorways, pivot behind machines, and let the creature commit to a path that is already empty. It turns like a truck and needs volume to find you, so crouch after the sprint and make it search with stomps you can hear. Bracken. The Bracken reads like a stalker that learned your social habits, choosing the crewmate who lingers or splits the route. It watches from stillness and takes you when attention is thin, dragging bodies to dead corners the team forgets to sweep. The queue is quiet rooms that feel too safe and a neck that should not bend. Bracken. The craft that saves you is attention in loops. Keep a buddy, check your 6 in glass, and do not let a hallway go silent for long minutes without a call-out. If you feel eyes and cannot find a shape, move to light and hold position until the shadow commits. Coil-Head. The coil is a statue that hates being seen. The spring neck jitters forward the moment you blink and freezes the instant your reticle lands. It is not speed. It is the gap between looks that kills, and long ladders turn that gap into a free fall. Coil-Head. Make eye contact a tool, not a reflex. Call a partner to backwalk while you glance at the route, and trade the gaze so one of you is always the lock. Corners are your ally here. A door frame lets you peek flick and reset the distance without a panic turn. Bunker Spider. This one is not a roamer, it is a landlord. It builds a webbed apartment above shelves and in vent mouths, then rents the floor to you for a toll of panic. Web strands are the real trap. They hold you long enough for the drop. Bunker Spider. Move like a sweep team. Torch the ceiling with your light. Listen for the dry scratch, and cut the sticky threads with distance rather than thrashing. If a nest owns a room, mark it and reroute. Greed is how the spider pays its rent. Jester. The Jester is a prop with a timer. You walk past a jack-in-the-box, the music winds itself without asking, and when the lid snaps open, the area becomes a blender. The trick is that the clock is generous right up until you believe it is. Jester. Treat the wind-up like a fire alarm. Drop greed, drop salvage, and leave the building before the grin arrives. Doors and ladders are not cover. Distance is. If you are near extraction, sell the run and live. Hygrodere. The slime looks slow and harmless until a teammate vanishes in one step. This blob is contact loss. Touch it and you are gone, which makes tight corridors a funnel and dark corners a guess. You cannot fight it, so the only verbs are plan and steer. Hygrodere. Read the map like plumbing. Keep a mental diagram of wide rooms that connect and never commit to a throat without an exit at the far end. If the floor glows wet, back out and recast the loop. A blob that owns a hallway owns your schedule. Eyeless Dog. Outside, the field belongs to a listener with a mouth that outruns you. It cannot see, so it hunts by sound. Footfalls, dropped scrap, panic voice, even a door slam from the ship. The sprint button is bait. Eyeless Dog. Crouch walk as policy and freeze as ritual. If you must move, do it slow and at angles, using rocks and terrain to break a straight line to your last noise. The safest carry is 2 quiet people rather than 4 loud ones. Forest Giant. Call it a lighthouse with legs. The giant patrols wide arcs, reaches across roads, and swats a moving shape like you would a fly you finally noticed. It is not subtle, but the scale turns distance into false safety. Forest Giant. Choose cover that beats height. Culverts, deep ditches, the lee of structures that break arm length. If you hear trees complaining, press flat and do not test curiosity with a peek. The time to move is when it passes and the wind relaxes. Thumper. Here is your pattern interrupt. Thumpers can lose you when you do not speak their language. Slide short sprints between machines, then cut to crouch and let silence erase the trail. Their search beat tells you where not to be. Your job is to be elsewhere before the second stomp. Bracken. A second twist. A second twist. The Bracken punishes isolation but respects groups who call cadence. Read names, mark locations out loud, and make the stalker pick someone who is never alone. The best trap here is kindness scheduled like a drill. Coil-Head. If that is true, then the Coil-Head can be moved like furniture. One player becomes the magnet, another becomes the mapper, and together you drag the statue out of your escape line by trading looks like a metronome. It feels like a party trick. It is actually a route tool. Bunker Spider. The pushback is that speed clears a nest before it drops. The clearer reading is that noise shakes more strands and buys you a face-first fall. Slow scan, then commit. 1 room clean is worth 3 rooms rushed. Jester. Curiosity loop. What if you do not see the box but hear the tune? The answer is the same. Distance over direction. Buildings echo. Pick the nearest exit that costs the fewest corners, and do not wait for the punchline. Hygrodere. People ask whether you can kite the blob in circles. You can, but the circle eats minutes, and minutes eat quotas. Better to mark the wet wing and run a dry loop you can memorize with your eyes half closed. Eyeless Dog. The strongest counter reading says sprinting in a storm is safer because the weather masks you. It sometimes works until it does not. Rain hides your steps until you bump a barrel and the bark becomes your last word. Forest Giant. Near neighbors like the dog test sound. The giant tests your ability to think in kilometers. Plan extraction before you land, and treat open ground like an empty page. Fast to cross, easy to die on. If a shadow covers half the field, you stayed too long. Thumper. What this changes for the team is tempo. You do not outrun the facility. You edit it, cutting lines of noise and drawing lanes the monsters do not use. The button is simple. When you hear the drum, stop writing a straight sentence. Bracken. What this changes for psychology is the cost of silence. The monster thrives when your comms die, so build a habit that keeps talk level even when the loot gets good. Button. Never let greed mute the radio. Coil-Head. What this changes for craft is how you split roles. A looker and a mover are stronger than 2 runners, because the coil only advances when nobody is looking. Button. Walk it like a dog and it sits. Bunker Spider. What this changes for the map is ceiling awareness. Your eyes want the floor for loot. Your life wants the rafters for legs. Button. Scan up, then step in. Jester. What this changes for routes is exit discipline. If a toy starts laughing, the building is no longer the level, the field is. Button. Out first, profit later. Hygrodere. What this changes for pacing is the courage to abandon a wing. You are not failing. You are choosing a timeline where someone comes home. Button. Redraw the plan when the floor shines. Eyeless Dog. What this changes for body language is speed control. Learn the muscle memory of a quiet carry and the patience to freeze when the world barks. Button. The loudest thing you do should be selling. Forest Giant. What this changes for strategy is horizon management. You survive long walks by planning short shelters within them. Button. Move from cover to cover and let the giant own the sky. We do not glamorize harm. We focus on craft, logic, and psychology. The goal is clean routes, clean comms, and crews that come back with stories, not apologies. Here is the final reframing. Lethal Company is not a monster game with a loot system. It is a logistics game with a predator ecosystem. Monsters punish straight lines, lone wolves, and jokes told at the wrong volume. They lose to corners, cadence, and a team that acts like a map with voices. Thumper. Break the line, break the beat. Bracken. Talk in loops that do not leave anyone alone. Coil-Head. Trade the gaze and carry it out of the way. Bunker Spider. Scan up, cut threads, reroute greed. Jester. If the music starts, the run ends. Unless you make leaving the win. Hygrodere. Treat shine as a wall. Eyeless Dog. Crouch, freeze, sell. Forest Giant. Cross the page only when your next shelter is a sentence away. If you keep those 8 rules, the ship door closes on time, the quota clears, and the only thing you lose is the habit of sprinting into the dark.